I am Diane Langland, your worship associate today, and I am serving with Reverend Diana McLean. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Mankato. All of you, whether joining us in person or on Zoom, are welcome in this time that we make sacred together. We extend an especially warm welcome to you if this is your first time attending one of our worship services. We know and appreciate that it can be difficult to cross the threshold of a new church for the first time, whether in person or online. As a Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, we humbly acknowledge that before European colonization, the Dakota peoples were stewards of the land on which our fellowship building sits. They teach us that the land does not belong to any of us, though it holds the history of our conflicts and our attempts at reconciliation. And we commit to an ongoing and intentional journey of humble connection with Indigenous peoples characterized by understanding our shared history, accepting responsibility for restoration, and building relationship in the here and now. Thus, we seek to be good relatives. Sunday morning is a team effort, and I'm grateful to all of you willing to serve. Our pianist this morning is Shay McKay. Thank you. Director of Children's Faith and Development, Macy Forsyth, will share a story for all ages. Children's Chapel will be led by Macy and Barb Francino. Nursery care is provided by staff member Lyndon Taylor and volunteer Carrie Johnson. And thanks always to our worship tech, Kat Clemens, and sound assistant, Joe Reineman. Thanks to Denny Cramblett for taking care of hearing assistance today, and thanks to our greeter, Diane Dobats. If you are new to the fellowship, we are grateful that you are expanding the we who is us. Whether you are attending in person or by Zoom today, please stay after worship for the congregational meeting. Oh, that's a mouthful. Congregational meeting. For those attending in person, we have a luncheon in the fellowship hall today after the meeting, thanks to Lee and Linda Gansky, Sue Wilkin, Deanne Nelson, Kathy Fauci, Nancy Blethlen, Liz and Steve Kipp, Nancy and Dennis Cramblett, and Diane Langland. We are always in need of more people to take turns in those roles that make Sunday morning possible. We are especially in need of more people to take turns assisting Kat with the sound system during worship, but there are many other opportunities as well. There's a clipboard on the hutch in the entryway for you to sign up for one or more ways to serve. And you can still also use our sign-up genius through our website. We have a few announcements this morning. The Minnesota Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Alliance, known by its acronym MUSJA, is looking for someone from our congregation who would be willing to be a liaison to their democracy strategist, Karen Wills. It would involve about a 20-minute check-in call monthly to let her know what we are doing in the realm of pro-democracy work, such as get out the vote efforts. And if you're interested in serving in this volunteer role, please contact Reverend Diana for more information. Moose Jaw is also holding an online Zoom movie series called First Friday Films Against Fascism. It starts February 2nd, next Friday evening at 6:30, beginning with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and continuing once a month through the election. Details of how to join and watch these movies will be in the weekly email, and you can also contact Reverend Diana for more information. But last and not least, if you are attending in person today, please pick up your stewardship packet as you leave the sanctuary. They are in a box at the back of the room, organized by last name. Those not picked up today will be mailed tomorrow, so please help us save postage by getting yours if you are here in person. Together, let us kindle a flame symbolizing our co-creation of sacred space at home and in this place made sacred by years of love. If you are with us on Zoom, please write in the chat that a chalice is lit on your street. And please say the words with me on the pew cards. We are a welcoming people of diverse beliefs who commit to nourish the spirit, broaden the mind, nurture the earth, and build community. May this flame we kindle remind us to strive today and every day to love beyond belief.
This morning, with this worship service, we kick off our annual stewardship campaign. Now, when you hear that, many of you may be thinking, even if you're not saying it out loud, oh no, a sermon about money. That's not what it is, though, or at least that's not all that it is. Stewardship, as we talk about a little bit every week when we take our collection, doesn't just mean making your annual pledge to the congregation and putting in extra money into the offering basket now and then, although that is important, and this is the time of year when we'll be talking with you about what is the right pledge for you, the pledge that matches both your ability to give and your commitment to this congregation. But stewardship is much broader than that. It's about caring for, being good stewards of something that's important to us. We are stewards of the earth when we reduce, reuse, and recycle. We are stewards of our homes when we pick up the messes that we or other people who live with us make. Sometimes animals, too. We've been picking up muddy or taking care of muddy puppy paw prints all over our house recently. We are stewards of our relationships with other people when we show loving care towards the important people in our lives. This morning, though, we are talking about being good stewards of this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Mankato, because it is important to us. It is important to you. I see it every week in the ways that you support it, and I hear it often in the stories that you tell me. Maybe this congregation has helped you through some difficult times. Maybe it's doing that right now, this week, for some of you. Maybe this is where you've celebrated milestones in your life. Maybe it's where you came to be challenged to be your very best self. Maybe it's where you come to be comforted when you feel battered and bruised, or where you come to be rejuvenated when you feel like you are running on empty. Maybe over time, this has been all of those things and more to you. So now the question is, what can you give back in return for all those gifts that this community has given you? How can you pay it forward for the people who have been a part of this beloved community with you and for those who have not found us yet? Once the stewardship team tallies up all of your pledges at the end of our campaign next month, we'll be able to begin to craft the budget for the 2024-2025 church year. A budget may seem like just a lot of boring business details to some of us, those of us who are not fascinated by financial matters. But in truth, the budget of a congregation is also a moral and theological document. It is as much a statement of our values as our mission statement, our bylaws, and our covenant of right relations. It shows what we are giving our resources to, what we value enough to pay for it. Similarly, the budget of an individual or family is also a moral document. During our stewardship campaign each year, we turn in our individual moral documents, our pledge cards, which together will help the congregation's leadership create the budget, the collective moral document that the members of this congregation will vote on in May, or the board, rather, will vote on in May, and which will guide us all into the next church year. We are always aware, those of us in church leadership, lay or ordained, that each year is just a small fraction of the story of this congregation's life. We are charged with making the most of our time here, both to honor the work done in the past to create the congregation and sustain it for many decades now, and to be good stewards of it for the generations who will follow us. We arrive at this point in our congregation's story informed and inspired by those who came before us, by the tales of days remembered. They serve as a beacon to us now, holding us to our highest ideals rather than the easiest path, charging us to answer the call of love rather than giving in to fear or despair. Those who came before us, that is, if we take it in the broadest sense, a mighty host of ancestors on multiple continents going back millennia. We modern Unitarian Universalists, a denomination that has existed in its current form only since 1961, live on just the latest branch of a religious family tree that we can trace back to the earliest days of Christianity, and we are connected through those roots to other religions as well. The Unitarian Universalist Association, to which we as a congregation belong, the partnership created in 1961, contains in its bylaws our principles. They also appear in the front of the gray hymnal, although I think the hymnals are old enough that they're missing a piece. We talk fairly often about our 7 principles, but less often about the 6 sources named along with those principles. Our faith gets its religious and spiritual and moral authority not from a single sacred text, nor from a single person who is the head of the church, but from what we have agreed upon together, what we have covenanted with each other. In that spirit, and knowing that this language is undergoing revision even as we speak at the UUA level, but will still contain our core commitments, I invite you to just listen to the words that we enshrined in those bylaws that joined the 2 branches of our faith, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, in 1961. These are not the original words from 1961. They've been amended a few times since then. It's an ongoing process. In their current state, they read, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. The bylaws continue. The living tradition which we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. And spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. Those, my friends, are some lofty ideals to which we Unitarian Universalists commit ourselves. We are asked to continually deepen our understanding and expand our vision, keeping always before us those principles and the sources from which our faith springs. When we support this congregation, we say yes to continuing the larger tradition of Unitarian Universalism. We say yes to a faith that includes the only Unitarian king who was the first to declare religious tolerance rather than imposing his religion on his entire country. We say yes to the faith that sent Reverend James Reeb and others to march with Reverend Dr. King in Selma. We say yes to the faith that stood in candlelight vigil outside Sheriff Joe Arpaio's Tent City Jail in Arizona in 2012, calling attention to the plight of immigrants in that state and elsewhere. We say yes to the faith that consistently fought for marriage equality, first in states across the nation and then at the national level. We say yes to the faith that showed up to say that Black lives matter in the streets of Ferguson, in the streets of Baltimore, in the streets of Minneapolis, in the streets of every town and city. We say yes to the faith that offers physical sanctuary to a small fraction of the number of immigrants facing persecution and deportation. We say yes to the faith that offers spiritual sanctuary to those hurt and frightened by the rise of bigotry and hatred in our nation. We say yes. We are inspired not only by the stories of our larger faith, but by the stories of our own living, both the stories of those who are part of the congregation today and those who have been part of it in past generations. Those stories call us to witness the difference this congregation has made and continues to make, the courage it has shown, still shows, and I trust will continue to show. When we support this congregation, we say yes to the congregation whose origins were in providing progressive religious education for children and youth. We say yes to the congregation that grew from that religious education program to a lay-led fellowship for all ages, and then gradually built up its commitment to professional ministry from consulting to very part-time to slightly more part-time, and eventually to its first full-time settled minister, my predecessor, Reverend Rita Capizzi. We say yes to the congregation that has earned both Green Sanctuary and Welcoming Congregation designations, living out a commitment to the environment and a commitment to inclusion and justice for LGBTQIA+ folks. We say yes to this congregation, which partners with many organizations in Mankato and the wider community to work for justice across many topics. We say yes. Our inspiration to say yes to all of this, however, doesn't just come from the past, whether it's the past of this particular congregation or our faith movement as a whole. We are also inspired by dreams of the future of the congregation and of our faith, and by new prophetic voices rising among us today. The dreams that inspire us include our own individual dreams. They include the visions and voices of all people, of all ages. But I want us to take a moment to think specifically of our young adults, our youth, and our children. You don't see all of them present here in the sanctuary every Sunday. If you don't volunteer downstairs, there are some you may not have spent much time with, but they are here. We often think of those people younger than ourselves as the future of our faith, but I'm here to tell you that they are also its present. They are part of our faith, part of this congregation, from the time they arrive here, just as older congregants are. They contribute to our community, not just learning from us, but also teaching us. Often, they even lead the way for us. It was actually youth from the Unitarians and the Universalists who began meeting together and merging into one group called Liberal Religious Youth before their two denominations consolidated. It has often been the youth and the young adults who help us see the latest need for us to grow in our understanding of justice and inclusion, whether related to sexual orientation, race, or gender identity. At our General Assembly every year, I have witnessed the Youth Caucus, kids in high school, rising as one body to stand at the pro or con microphone during debates as delegates prepare to vote on issues of social justice in our times and on other matters of the governance of our association. I almost always end up voting in the manner advocated for by the Youth Caucus, not only because they are the future of our faith and deserve our support, but because they have thoughtfully considered the issue at hand, often studied it in more detail than most other congregants, and they have usually articulated their position clearly and compellingly. This is part of what we say yes to when we support this congregation, and through it, the Unitarian Universalist faith as a whole. We say yes to lifespan faith formation. We say yes to our young people as we watch them grow from children to youth to young adults. We say yes to helping each other find our unique spiritual paths all through our lives, learning from each other along the way. We say yes to the possibilities of who we will be in the 21st century and beyond. We say yes. We make our commitment, and we make it again every year. This is how we fulfill our heart's desires, how we answer the call of love, how we keep the flames of our chalice and the fire of our commitment lit through generations. We say yes. May it always be so. Amen, and blessed be.
As Reverend Diana extinguishes the sanctuary chalice, please extinguish your chalice at home and say the words with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.